What's happening?
Yes, I am. He has that crazy idea many years before, and I thought it's really crazy because I'm not the kind of person who are too adventurous, to be honest.
I see.
I'm not really. I just like my comfortable life, you know. Maybe sometime on and off, I do like to, you know, have a little bit challenge, but not that kind of challenge. I think I never dream of, you know, traveling like that.
Right.
But I think once the children's growing up, and we started also to homeschool. I started to homeschool the kids, and you know, that idea just sort of come back.
Right.
And, you know, because when you homeschool the kids, sometimes you go for field trips and things like that, and you come back and you can see how the real experience, you know, link into the learning. And I thought that probably a good idea, but of course, it was a very big challenge to myself, I think.
Right. So
Yeah.
homeschooling made it easier to get the kids
It is.
out onto the road,
It is,
right?
yes. That is, I think that is also one of the reasons that make it easy for us to make decision.
Okay.
You know, if the kids were in school and things like that, so there are so many things that you have to think. But because the kids already homeschooled for many years, so thinking of them being together with me, with us, 24/7 during the journey it's not too scary for me.
Right.
But I was worried of him as well because he was, you know, a dad that used to go to work and come back. Of course, you know, not being together 24/7.
Yes.
And being together 24/7 is, you know, it's different. Even if you are a family,
Yes.
but when you actually stay together for many days and weeks. That is the big burden that I have in my mind. I think that was the most reason, the most thing that I always have in my mind before I actually say, let's go, you know.
Okay.
You know, to think that, because when you are together, you know, 24/7, everything can come out.
Yes, but how did Dad cope? I mean, how did you cope for this?
Oh yes, at the beginning I'm nearly crazy.
What was some of the biggest things that you had to endure?
Yeah, I think this is the longest time I stay with my children.
Okay.
I think before this, every day probably just only a couple minutes.
Yeah. Right.
My time mostly in the office, so office, home, and after home I just stay and stay separate, do my homework. But now with the travel together, I think I learn more about my children.
Yeah.
Sure. And it obviously, I don't know, brought you all closer.
It's probably one of the things that scared me is before we start the journey, it can be either two. It can be either we close together or it breaks us.
That's
you
true.
know, because when you are being there 24/7, day and night, with the challenge that come, you're going into the unknown territory, you know, you just don't know what's going to happen.
That's true.
You know, everything can come out.
And
so
you're all crammed in this caravan, which
that
is only
correct.
that limited size.
That is correct.
8 times 3 meters.
And I have 3 teenagers, you know, I mean, having teenagers at home is enough. But being with them without a room, I can't hide.
How did the kids cope with this journey? I mean, they were all cramped up, and you also say you know they are teenagers.
Yes.
So what happened? Were there rules being set at the onset?
Well, they're not very happy at first when we start the journey. I mean, you know, it was very hot summer at that time. It was fasting month in Ramadan.
Yes.
And, you know, all sorts of things. But Alhamdulillah, I think the kids were sort of kids that do have to listen at some point.
So you set some ground rules before the journey. What are some of the ground rules?
Not just the ground rules. I think the ground rule has been set up since they're small. I think that's what very important when you brought up the kids. That at the end of the day, you are the parents. You still have to be in control.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, although they're not very happy, but they do listen. You know, and maybe be, you know, living in a foreign country. At some point, you know, we have to work together as a team for many, many years.
Were you bored because, you know, being cooped up in a caravan? Were you bored throughout the journey because you're driving and, you know, you're just seated for the rest of the family, you're just seated inside a room?
Yeah, not really.
You don't have time to get bored.
Yeah.
Really?
We just realized when we reach Bukit Kayu Hitam and we see the signboard, welcome to Malaysia.
Yes.
After 155 days. So
Right.
I think the best time we sleep is in the journey.
Yes.
Very deep
yes,
sleep.
Yes.
Because you were tired or because it was so fun?
I think
Probably
that's both.
And you say it was not boring, not one moment. Why? Because
No.
everyone was occupied with some level of activity?
Not really occupied, but if you think that, you're actually in different places most of the time. I mean, only some of the time that are set extra days, after a couple of days, do set extra days. So, we have sort of extra rest
So you're
before things
sightseeing.
get too much, So at the end of the day, you're actually waking up to a different backyard.
Sure,
That's
sure.
what I say. So it become interesting. At
Oh,
some
I'm
point.
sure it has to have been absolutely fascinating to be in a different country, and also enjoy the different culture. Now we're going to take a look at the caravan that this family traveled in after the break. Don't miss it.